It started with a breakthrough, a triumph of human ingenuity. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Cross, and I was the lead researcher at Eclipse Industries, a private company working on cutting-edge space exploration technology. My life's work had been to create a way for humans to survive in the void of space without cumbersome suits or life support systems. We called it Exosynth, a biosynthetic augmentation that fused nanotechnology with the human body, enabling us to absorb oxygen from trace molecules in the airless expanse of space. It was supposed to be humanity's key to the stars. What I didn't know was that the stars had been waiting for us. For me. The first test subject was myself. It was the only ethical choice. The procedure was grueling, but it worked. I could step into the vacuum of space with nothing but my augmented skin and lungs, feeling the raw emptiness pressing in on me. At first, it was liberating. A silent symphony of freedom. No more oxygen tanks, no more barriers. But then I started to hear them. It began faintly, like static in the back of my mind. A whisper here, a hum there. I blamed it on the neurointegration of the exosynth. Side effects, I told myself. Nothing to worry about. But the whispers grew louder, sharper. They weren't just noise, they were words. Deeper. Come deeper. The answers lie beyond. The first time I heard it, I was in low Earth orbit, testing Exosynth's endurance. The voice was soft but distant. It echoed not in my ears but in my skull, resonating like a tuning fork. I dismissed it, but it didn't stop. In the following days, the whispers turned into conversations. Disembodied voices spoke to me in languages I couldn't understand. Some guttural and alien, others melodic and hauntingly beautiful. And always, they urged me to go deeper into the blackness. I kept the voices a secret. My colleagues noticed I was acting strangely, withdrawn, obsessed. They didn't understand. How could they? They weren't connected the way I was. I convinced Eclipse Industries to greenlight a solo deep space mission to test Exosynth's limits. Officially, it was about pushing the technology. Unofficially, I needed answers. When the engines of my craft roared to life, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The voices grew louder as I left Earth behind, their urgency palpable. Deeper, Nathaniel. The void is waiting. By the time I reached the Kuiper Belt, I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel something. A presence, vast and incomprehensible, brushing against the edges of my mind. It felt ancient, predatory. The exosynth pulsed beneath my skin, responding to it. And then the whispers changed. You're not human anymore. Shed it. Become us. I looked at my hands and realized they weren't entirely mine. The exosynth had begun to evolve, its nanostructures spreading like veins of liquid silver under my skin. The body felt lighter, more attuned to the void. I stopped needing food, water, or even rest. The first physical manifestation came when I reached the Oort cloud. My ship's sensors picked up strange readings, energies I couldn't explain. And then without warning, the hull began to frost over. Not with ice, but with something alive. The frost shifted and writhed, forming shapes, faces, eyes, mouths. They screamed silently, and I screamed with them. I stepped out into the void, the exosynth held strong, shielding me. But as I floated there, I realized I didn't need the ship anymore. I was the ship. My body had become a vessel, and the void itself was my crew. The transformation was complete when I reached the edge of the solar system. I felt my humanity slip away like a garment I no longer needed. My thoughts weren't my own. The voices weren't whispers anymore. They were commands. They told me to become a void walker, an emissary of the blackness between the stars. I saw things no human was meant to see. Galaxies twisting into impossible shapes, stars dying in reverse, and creatures made of light and shadow devouring entire systems. The void wasn't empty. It was teeming with life, ancient, hungry, and waiting for us to reach out. I don't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, I was back near Earth, my body unrecognizable. I caught my reflection in the ship's viewport, a shimmering, shifting form of black and silver, my eyes glowing faintly with the cold light of distant stars. I returned to Eclipse Industries, not to warn them, but to spread the message. Humanity isn't alone. The void is calling, and soon we will all answer. As Dr. Cross finishes his story, his shimmering form collapses into a pile of black liquid, which begins to creep toward the interviewer. The camera flickers and the screen goes black. The last thing heard is a faint, chilling whisper. Deeper. Come deeper. My name is Lieutenant Michael Harker, and I was the communications officer aboard the Athena Orbital Observatory. Our mission was simple: study Kepler 742b, a planet at the farthest edges of the habitable zone, and gather data on its potential for life. We weren't the first to attempt this. 2 other missions had mysteriously vanished upon approach. We assumed they had failed due to technical errors or cosmic debris. We were wrong. The Athena arrived at the planet after a 2-year journey, a silent titan gliding through the blackness. Kepler 742b loomed below us like a sapphire and obsidian marble, its surface streaked with glowing fissures that pulsed like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The planet was unsettling from the start. Its rotation didn't match the models, shifting unpredictably, almost as if it were alive. Our instruments couldn't fully lock onto it. Measurements fluctuated wildly. We chalked it up to the electromagnetic storms raging across its surface, a natural phenomenon. When we initiated our orbital pattern, the station fell into position with an eerie precision. Too precise. The engines powered down automatically. Athena seemed to be holding perfectly still. At first we marveled at the planet's beauty. Its distant surface shimmered with an almost liquid sheen, but hours turned into days, and days into weeks, and something became unnervingly clear. We weren't moving. It was Commander Voss who noticed first. We should be farther ahead in our orbit by now, he muttered during a status check. He ordered a recalibration of the nav systems, assuming a software glitch, but the results were impossible to deny. No drift, no forward trajectory. We were stuck, suspended in space. We tried firing the engines manually, but they wouldn't engage. Diagnostics showed nothing wrong. Even fuel reserves remained inexplicably full. The stars around us were fixed in place, as if frozen. Then came the time distortions. The clocks aboard Athena began to desynchronize. At first it was subtle. Minutes skipped or stretched, but soon it became chaotic. I'd leave the command module for what felt like seconds, only to return and find hours had passed. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, with people claiming I had been gone for days. The worst part was the sleep. None of us could rest properly. Dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were memories, but not ours. I saw alien landscapes scorched by fire, towering monoliths that stretched into eternity, and shadows that slithered across horizons that didn't exist. The others experienced similar visions. Dr. Patel, our lead scientist, began obsessively sketching geometric patterns, claiming they were coordinates. She started muttering about something she called the lattice, a structure she believed connected every particle of the universe. The whispers started on day 23. At least, I think it was day 23. Time didn't feel linear anymore. It was Commander Voss who first heard them. Faint murmurs over the intercom. When he checked the comm system, the channels were clear. No interference. "Harker, are you hearing this?" He asked me one night as we stood in the observation deck, staring down at Kepler 742b. I didn't have an answer. The voice was there. Faint, but distinct. "Return to the surface. The orbit is the key." The others began hearing it too. Sometimes through the ship's systems, sometimes directly in our heads. By the time the hallucinations started, we were unraveling. Voss tried to keep us together, but paranoia set in fast. Dr. Patel locked herself in the lab, convinced she had decoded the planet's message. She claimed the glowing fissures weren't natural. They were veins, feeding something beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Engineer Wallace dismantled half the station, muttering that we needed to build a signal amplifier. "They're trying to communicate," he said. I wish I could say it stopped there, but it didn't. And then Wallace disappeared. One moment, he was tightening a bolt in the engine room. The next, he was gone. No alarms, no breaches, no trace. We searched every inch of Athena, but he had vanished. The whispers grew louder. I began hearing them even when I plugged my ears. The planet's surface started shifting. Those glowing fissures? They formed patterns, shapes that pulsed in sync with our station lights. Patel finally emerged from the lab, pale and trembling. She shoved a data pad into my hands, pointing at a simulation she had run. "We're not in orbit," she whispered. "We're caught in a loop. The planet is holding us here." Why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. To feed. That night, Voss broke into the escape pod. He tried to launch himself back toward Earth, screaming that the station was alive, that it was consuming us. But the pods wouldn't launch. They were as trapped as we were. And then the thing appeared. It started as a shimmer in the observation deck, a distortion, like heat waves. It coalesced into a vaguely humanoid form, its skin a swirling mass of stars and void. Its presence was oppressive, like gravity pressing down on my chest. It said to me without moving its mouth, "You are part of the orbit now. You belong to Lattice." I don't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, I was floating in space, Athena nowhere in sight. A passing salvage crew found me, barely alive, my oxygen levels critically low. They didn't believe my story, and I don't blame them, but I know what I saw. Kepler 742b is still out there, waiting for its next victim. The Athena is still in orbit, its crew feeding the anomaly, and I'm still hearing the whispers. Return to orbit. Return to Lattice. My name is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vega, and I was part of the crew of the Stellar Dawn. Our ship was on a routine patrol at the edge of known space, scanning for new star systems, anomalies, or anything worth reporting back to Earth Command. Space was vast and quiet, monotonous even, until the day we found it. Drifting against the inky backdrop of the cosmos, it looked like a dark wound in space. A massive structure, blacker than the void around it, absorbing light like a singularity. The scanners couldn't make sense of it. No power signatures, no radiation. Just there. Curiosity killed the cat, they say. But out there, curiosity does much worse. We brought the stellar dawn alongside the structure, cautious but intrigued. The thing was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its surface was metallic yet organic, like living tissue fused with cold steel. Captain Harlow ordered a boarding team to investigate. The moment we docked, the atmosphere changed. The ship's lights dimmed and there was this pressure, like the space around us was holding its breath. I was on the boarding team. 5 of us suited up and stepped into the airlock. The moment the doors hissed open, I felt a chill, like the structure itself was watching us. Inside, the Ark was a labyrinth of twisting corridors, each one lined with what looked like translucent pods. Thousands of them stretched into infinity, their surfaces fogged over. When we shined our lights on them, we could just barely make out shapes inside. The shapes weren't human. Dr. Lin, our xenobiologist, was the first to approach. She wiped the condensation from one of the pods, revealing its occupant. It was an alien, its body coiled and segmented like a centipede, but with a vaguely humanoid face. Its eyes were closed and its chest rose and fell faintly. "They're alive," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "Suspended animation." The Ark wasn't just a tomb, it was a lifeboat. As we ventured deeper, we found chambers filled with relics, artifacts, tools, even what appeared to be written records. It was clear the species had been advanced, maybe even more so than us. But there was something off about the place. The air grew heavier the deeper we went, and the lights on our helmets began to flicker. The corridors seemed to shift when we weren't looking, leading us in circles. Commander Briggs, our security lead, ordered us to mark the walls with chalk, but even the marks seemed to fade or move. Then came the whispers. At first I thought it was just static from our comms, but no, it was voices. Soft, unintelligible, and everywhere. They echoed through the halls, growing louder as we neared the Ark's core. We found the central chamber after what felt like hours, though time seemed to lose meaning inside the Ark. The room was cavernous, dominated by a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Surrounding it were dozens of pods, larger and more elaborate than the others. Lynn was transfixed. "This must be the command center," she said, stepping closer to the crystal. Briggs and I were less enthusiastic. The whispers were deafening here, though still indecipherable. And the shadows, they moved. Not like tricks of the light, but with purpose. And then we saw them. The Guardians emerged from the shadows, their forms fluid and shifting like living oil. They were humanoid in shape, but lacked any discernible features. Just hollow, glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. Briggs raised his weapon instinctively. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice cracking. The creatures didn't react. They simply stared, their heads tilting in unison like predators sizing up their prey. When Lynn reached out to touch the crystal, everything changed. The Guardians moved as one, faster than anything I'd ever seen. They didn't walk or run, they flowed, their bodies stretching and twisting unnaturally. One of them reached Lynn before I could even shout a warning. Its arm plunged to her chest and she froze, her eyes wide with terror. It wasn't an attack, it was something much worse. The Guardian seemed to merge with her, its black form spreading through her veins like ink and water. Her screams echoed in my ears long after she fell silent. Briggs opened fire, his bullets passing through the Guardians like smoke. They retaliated, their forms solidifying just enough to strike. I watched in horror as one of them enveloped him, its body consuming him whole. I ran. I don't know how I made it back to the docking bay, but when I did, I found the remaining 2 crew members of the boarding team already dead. Their bodies were twisted, their faces frozen in expressions of unimaginable fear. The Ark didn't want us to leave. When I finally made it back to the Stellar Dawn, I found the ship in chaos. Systems were failing and the Whispers had followed me aboard. I tried to warn the captain, but before I could speak, the Ark's tendrils breached the ship. Yes, tendrils. Black appendages that moved with terrifying precision, wrapping around the hull and pulling us back toward the structure. I don't remember much after that. Just screams, static, and the feel of being watched. I woke up adrift in an escape pod. The Stellar Dawn nowhere in sight. A passing patrol ship picked me up, but no one believed my story. They said the Ark wasn't there when they arrived. There was no evidence of the Stellar Dawn or its crew. But I know the truth. The Ark is still out there, waiting. And the Guardians, they're not just protecting their cargo, they're hunting for more.